This is Father Dominic Holtz coming to you from Rome, Italy, with a word of hope for Tuesday, November 21st, the memorial of the presentation of the Blessed Virgin in the Temple. We're often told that the life of the Blessed Virgin is a model for all Christians. It's not exactly clear to see how that's the case for today's feast. Today's feast recalls, at least according to legend, the story when the Blessed Virgin, even in her childhood, was brought to the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, there to be dedicated and spend her childhood doing nothing other than praising the Lord. Theologically, of course, the memorial reminds us that Mary, from the first moments of her life, was dedicated entirely to God, open and dedicated to Him alone. We're more likely, however, I think, to identify with Zacchaeus in today's gospel, whose life is a little messier. He makes a fool of himself trying to attract the attention of Christ, climbing up a sycamore tree and waving Jesus down as he passes along. He has to give him a great extravagant show, giving away half of his possessions to the poor, and then recognize that he has defrauded people of their money, and so does his best over and above what he normally owes to pay them back. That's probably more likely closer to our lives and the way we have come to Jesus than the life of the Blessed Virgin. And yet the spiritual truth of Zacchaeus and of the presentation of the Virgin is the same spiritual truth. What both stories remind us is that for God to make use of us, for us to be open to God, to be instruments of God's power, we must be dedicated to the Lord. And dedication might, for most of us, mean an emptying out, a clearing out of our household, so that when Jesus says to Zacchaeus, "I must dine at your house," Zacchaeus recognizes that his house is far too cluttered with too much money that ought to have been given to the use of the poor, cluttered with things that he gained through fraud, through deceit, through sin, and he had to be rid of all those things in order for his household to be a place for Jesus to dwell. While, by a special privilege, the Blessed Virgin was open to the Lord in that way from the beginning of her life, the fact is all of us need to find a way to make ourselves open, not by the special grace of the Virgin, but through repentance, through clearing out our hearts and clearing out our lives, making our homes, if you will, empty, to be filled with the presence of the Lord who has chosen to dine with us. And that, my brothers and sisters, is a word of hope.